colors of the sunset. Walking the outback in search of a dream. Mystic Alchemist. Copyright 2021 Mystic Alchemist. Chapter 7. Doctors. You look terrible, his supervisor at work said when he saw Paul. Still feel good though, Paul said. I've noticed since your heart attack you've been slowly getting not like you used to be. It must have affected you a lot, the supervisor said soft enough for the others not to hear. Harder to sleep, but I don't worry about it. Still got to earn a living some way. Too young to retire. Paul felt he said that more as a prompt to himself. Did the doctor say anything about invalid payment? Nothing. Just poked me full of tablets and sent me off. They expect everyone to work until they drop, the supervisor grumbled. I'll die in my desk and they'd only push my body away to make space for someone else. I'll talk to you later. Less than half an hour the supervisor was back, a small square of paper in his hand and a smile on his face. Your appointment is at 10, the man said handing the paper to Paul. You're off sick for the day, so go there and if he wants you to go somewhere else, just do it. Let me know how it all goes. That was it. The man turned, leaving Paul to read the paper. Southern Personnel Solutions. All your legal problems solved. Guaranteed. The address was close to the city center, a place Paul never liked visiting. The parking was always impossible, especially with the truck, and he was due there in an hour. It wasn't peak hour, but the traffic was still bad. The closer he got the worse it was. At least he was going slow enough to easily see the address, a modern glass and concrete tower that he had passed before he really saw the entrance. There was finally a sign for parking, but $10 an hour. Shysters. He made the building in time, then the lift took ages and finding the office was not easy, the very last door in a long passage. Not sure if he had to knock or just walk in, he did both. It was a waiting room, but not like any he had seen in real life. As though from a 50s private detective show, most of the room was cream and green, but the parts that weren't were all chrome and wood laminate. There was a receptionist behind a modern desk while behind her were row after row of pale green file cabinets, but that receptionist would have fitted in well with the 50s. Even now her chest had his attention fully. He was sure she was a great asset to the business. Mr. Simpson, she said. That's me, he said looking up. She did have a pleasant face too. But I'm not quite sure why I'm here. Tony will see you soon and he'll decide. You can wait over there. She was pointing to two cream-painted wooden chairs to one side, and he turned to take one, making a real effort to not look at the woman again. It must have been a job lot at a clearing sale. He decided about the furniture while he waited. When he heard a door opening further he looked to see, and it was a well-suited man coming into the reception room. Paul, the man said loudly, his voice filling the room completely. I'm Tony. Follow me. Paul got another glance at the receptionist as he followed Tony into a small office filled with the same color decor. Artificial, he'd decided while he waited for Paul to close the door behind him. Definitely artificial but nice to look at. They told me you're not feeling too well, Tony said before anyone had been seated. Oh, sit. Tony pointed to the closest of two chairs. Paul obeyed. I'm not too bad. I can still work. I don't want things like that said around this place. You look bad and you're getting worse every day. There is a truth in that, Paul said. See. You know it now. Feeling dizzy sometimes. Not sure where you are. It's just getting old. Really? Tony said. To me the episodes are getting more serious and you might cause an accident at work. But I need to keep working. Not if I get you an invalid payment. Work with me here. Play your cards right and you can have a life of leisure. How much? I like a man who sees the future clearly. $1,250 a month clear. No need to step out of home. Money in your bank every fortnight. That sounds good, doesn't it? $300 a week wouldn't pay the rent and power. Move. Some get a rent allowance as well. I'm just talking about the basics. No reason you can't get some cash work on the side either, capish? Now let's start it again. Would you say you might have an episode and cause some trouble at work? It's possible. And it's getting worse and worse. Yes. You always look as sick as this. No. I just couldn't sleep last night. Because of the stress and worry about having another episode, Tony said as though he was dictating a report. I'll need a second opinion, but you remember what you need to say while I try to get an appointment for you now. You wait. Tony left him alone to think. 300 was not enough to continue his existing life, but it was more than enough to cover food and expenses for a man walking around the country. In fact, it would be heaps. 12, Tony said loudly as he returned. He's going to see you in his lunch hour. Cost an extra 50, but you're not paying, so who cares? Sylvia will give you his address and you go there now and wait. Come back here after him so we can get things in motion. Tony was still standing with an arm extending toward Paul, indicating that this visit was over. We'll start the paperwork when you come back, Sylvia the receptionist said as she handed him a paper. It's not too bad really, she smiled. Paul was smiling too, but it was really that he had decided they were real and that would make any man smile. Dr. Higginbotham. Employment psychologist. They think I'm crazy, he thought. Maybe I am, but what have I got to lose? At least his building was close enough to walk. This office looked more like he expected, chrome and timber and recessed lighting, but the receptionist looked as tired as he felt and hadn't been employed for her looks. Wait until you're called, she said. This time the waiting area was a long bench. Certainly with bright chrome legs and wood grain laminate, but cold and hard to sit on. He supposed it kept the patients alert. While he waited, he thought of what he should really say. Part of him willing to say anything for the freedom and part cautioning what he might be denying himself in the future. Once you were considered an invalid, there wasn't always a path out. Mr. Simpson. That door on the left. No personal guidance, and he chose to knock before he turned the door catch. Still concrete and chrome decor, with a white-coated man sitting in front of a white paper-strewn desk, the man munching a sandwich and briefly looking up. Sit, he muttered, still sandwich pieces in his mouth. Major depression, isn't it? Tiredness, Paul said truthfully. Getting worse after a heart attack, the man said. Paul thought the man was reading something, but it might have only been a lunch menu. They're worried you might have an episode at work. That was news to Paul. They never told me. Not wanting to make you worse. Common in these cases. Like your work. Yes, and I need it to pay the bills. Extreme pressure to work, the man said slowly as though he was sounding a sentence. Paul saw the pen in his hand. They gave you tablets for depression. 3 for my heart. Those cardiac men. They never see the whole man, only see the heart and veins. If I was you, I wouldn't get too worried about their tablets. Heal your mind and your mind will heal your body. What do you suggest? Paul asked. Rest. Let the stress go and let your mind heal. Better than all the tablets. I can arrange payments while you recuperate. I'll send Tony the forms and he can do the rest, and don't be too quick in asking to go back to work. Most important, you make sure you're fully healed first, and that might take many years. The man looked up at Paul for the first time, then spoke more as a friend in confidence. If I didn't have so many commitments, I'd do it myself. One day. That's it, the man said when there had been a long silence. Still got the rest of my lunch. You should be fine without any more visits, but keep my address in case. The receptionist made him sign a paper before he left. He only read a little. It was a bill to be passed on. $350. Someone was getting rich out of him. Tony's receptionist greeted him like a long-lost friend when he got back. I see things went very well with Dr. Higginbotham, his report should make the rest a certainty. You can do the balance of the paperwork with me. Tony's no good with computers. Sit alongside me, there's a chair there so you can see the screen. He sat alongside Sylvia while she opened an official-looking file on the screen and began filling the blanks, asking personal questions about his past and present situation. Anything you don't know now, you can tell me when you come back with the papers. What papers? Birth certificate. Bank statement. Rent agreement. Loan documents. That sort of thing. I'm in deep now, he thought as Sylvia filled most of the blanks in the form without asking him. Her answers seemed a little slanted toward poverty, but then when he thought truthfully about it, he was poor. That thought had him staring at nothing a good time. That's it. You come back tomorrow with those papers and we can sign it then. Oh, it might be a good move to try to sell your vehicle soon, before they take your license. My license? The government. You know. Protecting everyone from themselves. What for? Well, they might not want a man as ill as you driving. I've seen it too many times. Better to be prepared, I say. Losing your license is not the end of the world. He felt like she had punched him in the gut. He'd suspected there would be problems following this path, but he'd never thought it would come to losing his mobility. See you tomorrow with the papers, Sylvia said, and he mumbled agreement. By the time he'd negotiated the way out of the tower, part of him had accepted the idea of not having a license. Less ways for the government to track me, he thought. No need to maintain a fixed address and no fees to pay. Maybe it could be a good thing. Or not. When he paid over a day's wages to the parking attendant to retrieve his truck, he had another reason to not have a vehicle. They told me it went well, the supervisor at work seemed pleased to say. And now I've arranged sick pay for 4 weeks while the paperwork goes through. Sounds like you want to get rid of me, Paul said. Not really, the supervisor said more quietly. But I want to see you happy too. It was a sober trip back to the apartment. In one way he'd been given a path to a new life like he'd dreamed, but then the old life didn't want to die so easily.